Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shin Yena, and I'm delighted to be your session host this morning. Let us begin panel discussion 4 on the agenda, Cybercrime. All speakers are given 7 to 8 minutes for the presentation, and we cordially ask you to keep the time. Deputy Minister François Guimond of Canada will serve as moderator for this session. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Deputy Minister of Public Safety of Canada, Mr. François Guimond.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à tous. It's early in the morning, but I'm convinced you're all full of energy. And I would be remiss if I did not start by noticing the quality event yesterday night at the dinner and also the entertainment. It was outstanding, and I just want to pass my thanks, and the panel wants to do the same in joining me in saying so. And this, to this point, is an outstanding conference and should be noted. So thank you very much for all of you who work at making this a success. As I prepared, by the way, I will not be too long, I promise. I won't use 9 minutes. But just to set the stage from my perspective, I was reading a book recently, which frankly is connected, but not directly to cyberspace, cybersecurity. And this book is entitled The Universe Within, and it has to do with theoretical physics. So right now you're going to wonder, where is he going with this? The person who wrote the book is Neil Turok. He's a very well-known theoretical physicist, and he leads the Perimeter Institute in Canada. And what's fascinating about the book is not only how science has evolved, which frankly gave rise to the reality of computers, servers, and what we see now today in cyberspace. But more importantly, as I was reading this book, I was struck by this image very often that we have of big names, Einstein, Rutherford, Planck, Maxwell, seem to be standalone characters. And when you read this book, Turok, the author, goes at length to explain that these folks, at any given time in their era, were connected to one another. Quite amazing. So yeah, they did have big discoveries, but they were regularly speaking to one another because every so often they got stuck in their field of business. Reminds me of water polo, when you see that ball moving from one player to another and ultimately being put in the net. Now, how does that relate with the topic today? Well, science has given us computing. There's a lot of talk about quantum computing. You're aware of that. And these computing capacities has given us the internet, cyber capacity, the cyber world we're in. And at the core of what I've just described is cooperation. Cooperation, dialogue, in order to advance the betterment of humankind. That's what struck me about the book. So we all feel at one point that we're somewhat isolated, but at the end of the day, we're all connected in making a difference for the world. So, you know, colleagues, great success is not a matter of one country. Great success is not a matter of one person. It's mutually reinforcing behavior and good open dialogue that is transparent. That can make a difference. Now, let's bring this back now to cyberspace before I introduce our panel members. We have a world now, by its very nature, the cyberspace, where enhancement of cooperation is critical. Connectivity. It needs to be inclusive, and certainly the internet, as we all know it, in cyberspace, is borderless. And it can play a huge role in providing from freedom of expression. It can allow for growth globally. Yesterday I was taken aback by that number flashed on the screen, this famous 6% of global GDP worldwide. This is a huge number. So cyberspace is good for standard of living and growth in our collective countries. Yet, it's also a field, like anything else, that is exposed to nefarious type activities, crime, which is the purpose of our panel this morning. People stealing money, I'm using the most basic image. People carrying out sexual exploitation activities, organized crime. It's not only local, national, it's international, it's borderless. Cybercrime is characterized by potentially very low-tech capacity with disproportionate impact. We're all aware of that. You don't need to be hundreds of people. A single individual, couple of computers, single computer, a good brain, intellectual capacity can wreak havoc on financial systems. The Budapest Convention has recognized that reality on cybercrime, and it has put forward a number of sections which are meant to structure how one can go about cybercrime worldwide. Today, I would like to propose two things. A little bit like yesterday for cybersecurity. The two are connected. I hope that the panel member that I will introduce now in 1 second will focus on how we can put forward practical solutions in handling cybercrime activities. That's the first ask. Frankly, if you all leave today, tomorrow, with 1 or 2 good ideas, this would be an outstanding outcome. First thing. Second thing, I think that I went at length explaining how cooperation and dialogue is important. So I would like, as a second point, to get from the panel a feel of how they see cooperation, dialogue, capacity building, playing a role in dealing with cybercrime. These are my 2 asks from panel members. I will now introduce them. I lost my paper, I found it now. So, colleagues, the first panel member is Yang Nyutsik, who's the director of the International Cybercrime, Korean National Police. Second panel member, Sanjay Virmani, director, Interpol Digital Crime Center. Alexander Segar, secretary to the Cybercrime Convention from the Council of Europe. Mr. David Brandon Powell, Chief Security Officer at the National Australian Bank. Bilal Shen, who's the Director of International Operation at the Turkish National Police. Lee Kan-ju, who's the Chief Prosecutor in the Daejeon District Prosecutor Office. And I also have 2 individuals that will play the role of lead discussant, which will then speak after the panel members will have made their presentation. Madame Carrie-Anne Barrett from the National Ministry of National Security in Trinidad and Tobago, on my right, and Alexander Adovitsky from the Russian Foreign Minister on my right as well. So I will now turn to our first panelist for his remark, Yang Nyutsik, please.
Thank you very much, Minister, and distinguished delegates and guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to have the chance to give a presentation for the Seoul Conference on cyberspace. With the narrowest point of view, crimes and criminals are objects of fight mostly by devoted professions, such as police, prosecutors, and judges. But we know that cybercrime is now breaching trust and security of cyberspace and bringing negative impacts on economic growth and prosperity. It simply means that cybercrime gathers multi-stakeholders' concerns. So I'm especially happy to be here, where we are able to try a holistic approach for the phenomena happening on cyberspace. Firstly, I would like to let you know that I was asked by Preparatory Secretariat of the conference to introduce the overview of results of preparatory workshop on cybercrime. I will speak mainly based on the official report for the pre-workshop released by the Secretariat, of which the full text is available at conference website. To promote effective discussion in the main event, the pre-workshop on cybercrime was held in line with the annual International Symposium on Cybercrime Response, hosted by Korean National Police, based on the agreement with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. During the free workshop, 460 participants representing government, law enforcement, international organization, business, and academia actively discussed cyber threat and response strategies, international cooperation, and public-private partnership from various perspectives under the theme of response strategy for secure cyberspace. The workshop began from opening address by Mr. Lee Sung-han, the Commissioner General of the Korean National Police Agency, followed by presentations by 16 speakers for 3 sessions, including special session for Seoul Conference on Cyberspace. In his speech, Commissioner General Lee warned the escalated threat of cybercrime and emphasized the importance of cross-border cooperation. In addition, he opened a plan of expansion of current cyber division of Korean police to the top-level cyber policing bureau. The scope of discussion was extremely broad in the followed main sessions. It covered legal, technical, and operational issues, which has international and national importance. Case studies were given with lessons and proposal of better practices, potentially to be a best practice for reference. Among others, 6 distinguished topics were selected as strategies for tackling cybercrime to be noted in the workshop report. As far as I know, the order of topics does not reflect the importance of topics. The first strategic response was the establishment of specialized department for cybercrime investigation. Many countries now have a certain form of centralized cybercrime unit. It is efficient because it would help to mitigate the problem of insufficient resources. We can also expect that it reduces the complexity of communication by using unified contact points for international cooperation. Now that specialized department is one of key components in national cybercrime strategy. For example, it is natural that Korean government started cybercrime capacity building assistance program from helping for setting up cybercrime unit in receiving countries. Databases. No one can overemphasize the importance of proper information to take a right action in timely manner. So, the need of construction of databases for collection, analysis, and dissemination of data such as IP address, malware, and criminals was identified. Setting up hotlines by designating contact point for each country. I think it wasn't the first time when the notion is proposed, but it might be repeated because it is still incomplete. Based on Korean experience, it's actually far from completeness. Cooperating with Interpol and Europol. In this strategy, coordinating role of international and regional organizations for international law enforcement operations were emphasized. It may be understood as a demand for extended functionalities and responsibilities of existing organizations such as Interpol and Europol. Strengthening public and private partnerships was recognized as an essential component as well, especially in the field of malware analysis and crime prevention. For example, a speaker representing private sector showed that a big data possessed by a corporate is potentially used for cybercrime prevention. However, in the partnership, questions including harmonization between public interest and private interests, such as privacy, were also raised. The last strategy is supporting capacity building of developing countries. Let me skip this because Mr. Alexander Zager will talk about this topic in a great detail. During the Seoul Conference special session, as the moderator mentioned, it was emphasized that the Seoul Conference should discuss practical solutions, as all already agreed on the importance of international cooperation. Participants also hoped that the awareness level of senior officers officials attending the conference increases so that tackling cybercrime becomes national priority. The result of pre-workshop was documented and disseminated for those who are engaged in the preparation of this conference. And I think it greatly contributed for organizing this conference, including this panel discussion. We could listen to various voices from different perspectives, reminding that cybercrime issues are complicated enough to be discussed much more. I hope we continue to talk about the topics proposed in the pre-workshop, but not limited. To conclude, the phenomenon of cybercrime is challenging for all stakeholders who are pursuing their own interest. We cannot reach the goal instantly. Rather, we can only step forward one by one. We will have one more big step today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yang. Much appreciated. We'll now pass on to Sanjay, please. Your turn. Thank you.
Good morning, distinguished guests, my fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Before I begin my presentation, I would just like to say a quick word of appreciation to the conference organizers for hosting such an outstanding conference with very informative discussions and timely presentations. So thank you very much, and also for inviting me to talk to you today about the Interpol Global Complex for Innovation. And hopefully, I'll talk about how it actually addresses international cooperation and partnership, the theme of today's panel. So the Interpol Global Complex for Innovation is currently being constructed in Singapore and is scheduled to be completed in the middle of next year. There's a mock-up there of what it'll be. It's going to be a state-of-the-art facility that'll house different components of Interpol. And it'll be a complement to the Interpol General Secretariat headquarters in Lyon, France. And one of the ideas is, the reason to put it there was to enhance the organization's presence in Asia. And so although the IGCI will have other Interpol operational and administrative components, the primary mission will be to serve Interpol's 190 member countries as a global center against cybercrime. Once fully operational, the IGCI will serve as a platform to share actionable threat intelligence between our member countries, identify trends, develop capacity building programs, and really serve as a platform to facilitate international cooperation in cyber operations. So this is currently being constructed. It's scheduled to be finished next year. However, there is a presence in Singapore by Interpol. Currently, we have a transition support office, which I'm a part of. It's about 20 people right now. And the main mission really is to start developing our processes, our infrastructure, creating the networks so that we're operational on day one when we open up. That being said, we also already are operational to a certain degree, helping member countries in cybercrime, especially in the area of capacity building and training and assisting cyber investigations as well. So as far as what's going to be contained in the IGCI, as I mentioned, there's going to be a few different components, but there's really two main directorates that are primarily focused on cybercrime. The first is the Cyber Innovation and Outreach Directorate that will be looking at emerging technologies and conducting proactive research to assist law enforcement around the world in countering the increasingly sophisticated challenges posed by cyber criminals. They will also focus on identifying and fostering partnerships with other law enforcement organizations, as well as entities from the public, private, and academic sectors. One thing that's clear from this conference and in discussions is that no single entity, whether government or organizational, public or private, can really combat cybercrime alone. It really has to be done in a collaborative type of spirit. And that's really the only way to be successful, and that's really what the foundation of what the IGCI is built on, is not only leveraging the capability within the existing Interpol infrastructure, which has NCB's national central bureaus in our member countries to deal with the cybercrime investigators, but to really harness the expertise from the private sector. And in one of the presentations yesterday, there was a mention about really the bulk of the resources that are devoted to ICTs is in the private sector. So it's really identifying the experts out there and leveraging and building a trust model relationship. So the other directorate that's listed up there is the Interpol Digital Crime Center, and that's what I lead in Singapore. And the Digital Crime Center is being set up to support our member countries' operations on digital crime by providing investigative support in ongoing cyber investigations, as well as digital forensic support through the Digital Forensic Laboratory that's currently being constructed that will serve as a center of excellence for forensic technology in the law enforcement community. The Digital Crime Center will also have a Cyber Fusion Center where Interpol digital crime officers can work side by side our partners from the various sectors that I mentioned. And they'll be able to work tactically on real-time cyber issues, look at malware, work with our different partners that bring in perspectives from their respective agencies, organizations, and combat it in a real-time fashion. So one of the things Interpol does is that it hosts working groups, usually twice a year, with representatives from different countries, and it's basically on a regional type of makeup. And one of the things we'd like to do is get feedback and understand, what are the real threats out there, what are the requirements from our member countries. And so we've come up with a model for international law enforcement cooperation on cybercrime around three main areas. One is capacity building and training, harmonization, and operational support. So in regards to capacity building, the Digital Forensic Laboratory spearheads a lot of our initiatives, and they already are conducting, and they will be conducting capacity building efforts on the forensic front so that law enforcement agencies have the expertise to secure and preserve digital evidence. It will also work with academia and the private companies with relevant expertise to test bed and develop new forensic tools. And this is something where we're building in-house expertise, but we're also working with other organizations, Europol's EC3, ITU Impact, to really work in an efficient manner so that we can kind of leverage our strengths to reduce redundancy as far as where we're focusing our capacity building efforts. So with harmonization, the Interpol Digital Crime Center will seek to encourage harmonization of national legislations for combating cybercrime. It will create synergies with perspectives stemming from the private sector, academic and public organizations in order to better understand cybercrime issues. Interpol will try to act as the voice of the law enforcement community from our member countries on cybercrime, suggesting or recommending tightening of international cyber law and plugging any global IT loopholes that are identified. And the third pillar to this is operational support, which I've already alluded to, and this is facilitating the coordination of national cyber operations that are ongoing with our law enforcement units in our member countries. The Digital Crime Center will provide support in cyber investigations and assist in the facilitation and coordination of joint operations, which is already being done to a certain extent, as I mentioned. And so this will be worked tactically on investigations that come up in our member countries, and based on the requirements of the member countries, their capabilities, their expertise, that'll dictate how much support we provide, whether it's just guidance with best practices or on-the-ground support, helping the cybercrime investigators. And as I mentioned, that's being done currently. Now, looking forward strategically, one of the issues that comes up in our working groups all the time is the issue of getting subscriber information, account information from a lot of the providers, usually based in the U.S. And sometimes through the mutual legal assistance treaty, it can take months or longer. And so one of the things we're looking at doing is creating kind of a global clearinghouse for building trusted, verified lists of law enforcement officials that when we get requests, we can work with the providers to expedite the retrieval of account information, which really is kind of the fundamental information for starting a cyber investigation. Obviously, in the current environment, it's very challenging. It's a long way ahead, but we feel that this is one area that we can add a lot of value if it's successful. And so part of operational support also, as I mentioned, is the Cyber Fusion Center. And one of the main ways that we'll be able to assist our countries is through this Fusion Center. And the CFC is being developed to provide essential assistance during all stages of the investigation. And it functions in similar to our current Interpol Command and Coordination Center, where we'll provide real-time monitoring and analysis of malicious internet activity, giving member countries the intelligence and expertise required to more effectively investigate digital crimes. And so as far as forensic support, I've already mentioned some of the things that we're doing in this regard, but just one of the things I want to add is, one of the things that we're hearing at the conference and other places is just the how much mobile phone platforms are increasing, and with the proliferation of that, this is going to be an area that we're really focusing, building in-house expertise with our digital forensic lab, working with the private sector, with the companies out there, and as well as some of the forensic companies as well, to get that expertise and to roll that out when it comes to actually extracting data from mobile platforms, extracting it, analyzing it, and preserving the evidentiary process as well, so in case it's ever used in prosecution. So that's basically it in a nutshell. It was kind of a high level, but this really is going to be an ongoing discussion. We have it, as I mentioned, with our working groups with Interpol, but it's also something that I want to offer up to the attendees. Please come and see me if you have ideas as far as where we can focus our efforts as far as the international law enforcement community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you very much. Some of the points you make about capacity building is a nice segue to our next presentation by Alexander Seger, who is going to be talking about capacity building to help law enforcement. Alexander, please.
Thank you. Good morning. Once a year, we're organizing in Strasbourg in France something called the Octopus Conference on Cooperation on Cybercrime. And in 2010, at the Octopus Conference, we said there is a need for a global capacity building effort. Coming here now to Seoul, we believe we have gone a long way. We have made a major progress in those 3 years. And I think with this conference, we can now say we are indeed fully engaged in such a process. I will speak about capacity building, the Council of Europe contribution that we can make worldwide. I will start with some conceptual remarks first. Take note of the website there. We recently posted a discussion paper that elaborates in more detail what I'm going to present in the next 7.5 minutes. Yesterday, somebody said we should not only talk about threats all the time, about the dangers, about the risks. We should formulate positive objectives. And if we talk about cybercrime prevention and criminal justice, we can formulate as a positive objective, yes, a contribution to cybersecurity, but also as a positive objective to contribute to the rule of law in cyberspace, and through that to human rights and rule of law altogether, but also to human development, poverty reduction, and democratic governance. If we formulate positive objectives in this way, we also have to be conscious that there may be unintended consequences, that there may be type of measures we take that may counter these objectives. And for that reason, we have to be very careful that when on the one hand, as governments, we meet the positive obligation to protect people against crime, that we also need to respect a number of conditions when investigating cybercrime. We have in the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime, Article 15 on conditions and safeguards. We have data protection agreements that we also think should be promoted worldwide. And if you look at the case law of the European Court of Human Rights, there are a number of conditions that have to be met when public authorities interfere in the rights of individuals. I think Carl Bildt yesterday, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sweden, mentioned some of them. Here are some more that you can extract from the case law of the European Court of Human Rights, and I guess those would apply similarly anywhere in the world. We have a pretty good understanding of how to apply such conditions and safeguards in the criminal justice process. These conditions and safeguards and these requirements should also apply in the national security arena. But I think we have lots of question marks there these days to what really applies and whether all of these conditions are actually met. So I think we need to do some more work there. The capacity building as an approach to cybercrime has a number of advantages. It doesn't have to wait for years or decades of international negotiations. It can respond to needs and produce results at impact right away. It facilitates multi-stakeholder cooperation. It contributes to human rights and the rule of law in cyberspace. It contributes to human development, poverty reduction, democratic governance. As I said, we have to link here, and this is a point I want to emphasize, we have to link measures on cybercrime, capacity building on cybercrime, to the development agenda. At the moment, development cooperation agencies are not involved. We have to bring them on board. Through that, we can also reduce the digital divide. And very important, the approach on capacity building benefits of broad international support. We had recently some discussions with a number of states about what does it mean, capacity building? Does it mean going somewhere, organize a workshop, go out again? That is not a sustainable way of doing capacity building. Capacity building is supporting a process of change. You need a commitment by an organization, by a government, to go from a situation A to a situation B, and this process then has to be supported. That's what we should do through capacity building. So if a government does not have no strategy, no policy on cybercrime, we could have, as a result of capacity building, a strategy adopted and implemented. If the government has no or weak legislation, the result could be that the government has comprehensive legislation in line with international standards. If there are no investigations on cybercrime or no use of electronic evidence in criminal proceedings, the result can be that there are investigations, prosecutions, adjudications regarding cybercrime and electronic evidence, etc. So this supporting a process of change should be the philosophy of capacity building efforts, rather than going somewhere and doing something in parallel, creating parallel structures and processes that are then not sustainable because nobody in a country supports them. The way we approach this in the Council of Europe is we have, yes, the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. No need to elaborate too much on that because it's well known, it's an acquis. And then we have, in addition to setting standards, setting additional soft law or hard law instruments, we have a follow-up mechanisms to monitor and assess the implementation of this treaty by the Cybercrime Convention Committee. And then we have capacity building in the sense of having a number of technical cooperation programs in order to strengthen capacities in countries. The point I want to make here is capacity building, the way we do it, is not an isolated element. It's part of in a very dynamic process where results from capacity building may lead into the work of the Cybercrime Convention Committee or also may lead to the development of new standards, soft law or hard law instruments. The reach of the Budapest Convention is not limited to Europe, and therefore we're also not limiting our capacity building activities to Europe. We have been working in more than 120 countries worldwide. 2 weeks ago, we had a workshop on training, judicial and law enforcement training in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, where we had also representatives from Pakistan and from the Maldives. A few weeks earlier, we had a workshop in Tanzania for East African countries to work on the effectiveness of legislation. In 2 weeks from now, we have a workshop in Kiev for countries of Eastern Europe. So we work all over the world. In 2004, we also organized an Octopus conference. We had 15 pages of conclusions that we distilled into 1 page of conclusions, which we distilled into 1 word. If you have one thing you need to do to improve measures against cybercrime, to make progress. It says cooperate at all levels. Based on that, we then developed a number of capacity building programs from 2006 onwards. Some of them are now still going on and others are now being completed. We counted that we did about 600 or more activities all over the world in more than 130 countries, also involving lots of private sector organizations and academia. As I mentioned before, there's this multi-stakeholder approach that benefits a lot from capacity building. The type of activities, they're listed here. I don't have to go through them in detail. As I said, there is a discussion paper on our website which goes into all of this in detail, and for each of these elements provides some resources, materials, tools. These tools, materials are available and can be rolled out to any country around the world. Now, two new developments from this week and one thing that is happening in 2 months. We signed yesterday an agreement, a new program with the European Union, a joint program on global action on cybercrime, which has a budget of 3.35 million euros and which will go on for 3 years. We can work under that with any country that is prepared to implement the Budapest Convention on legislation, on training, on institution building, etc. Also this week, we concluded a memorandum of understanding with the government of Romania to set up a cybercrime program office. If we want to do better capacity building, we need to have our own capacities to do capacity building. And therefore, we are setting up this office now in Bucharest, which will allow us to implement from there, to manage from there, all our global capacity building efforts. We hope that this will become operational in January 2014. And I mentioned several times Octopus. Here we go again. We have from 4 to 6 December Octopus Conference on Cooperation Against Cybercrime. You're all invited to join that event in order to continue the discussion that we had today. Thank you.
Merci Alexander, très bien fait, much appreciated. I'm struck by the emphasis that you put on cooperation as we look at and talk about capacity building. And that, again, is a nice segue to our next presentation by David that will be talking about cyber threats and how the public-private sector partnership play a role. Please, David.
Thanks, Francois. Dignitaries, colleagues. I'm not going to have any slides today because I think you get death by PowerPoint. So I'm just going to talk about a few examples that we've used in Australia to sort of help share intelligence and cooperation, much like my other colleagues are talking about, but to a real effect. As you know, National Australia Bank, or many will know, National Australia Bank is one of 4 major banks in Australia, and we're a great target for cybercrime. Some raw numbers, we get about 8 million intrusion attempts from our internet connections every month. You know, most of those are benign, obviously, and they're typical scans, those sorts of things. The traditional controls still hold, but about 1,000 a month of those are serious actors that we have to deal with. So that's the sort of size we're doing. We shut down about 200 phishing sites every month, and those that don't know, it's been around a long time, but a phishing site is a site that criminals take over that are then used to spew out email spam to try to get you to click that link. And if you click that link, it's likely your machine will be compromised and you'll be used to commit fraud on your account, your banking account. Even though that's been around a long time and everyone knows, please don't click the link, about 5,000 National Australia Bank customers every month still click that link and get infected. So the whole problem isn't going away on that front. And I sort of talk to that to give you a size of the issues. It's sort of worse in Australia because there's 4 major banks. Most people sort of bank with 2 of them. You've got a credit card with one and a home loan with another, and you know. So when you spew out phishing emails, you got a pretty good chance of luring a victim into this stuff. And it used to be that you could spot the lure, and it used to be, it was a nice banking lure or something. Now it's like you really like Cannondale bikes, and have you seen this beautiful carbon fibre technology that has just been released to the market? Looks nothing like a banking Trojan, right? So what we did in the start of this, we started sharing in intelligence because Sure, someone had to be hit first, but if someone's hit first, then if we could all quickly work out, how that attack occurred, then we could tune our own defences to actually start to remediate and prevent fraud losses. This was fine in the early days of phishing, but as I've sort of talked to you about the numbers, it's just got astronomical that you really can't handle now. So what we did is we set up a portal with the Australian Federal Police locally in Australia, and now all the financial institution input into a certain format within that portal to have that information that's readily available. Many of the banks are actually taking that portal information directly and feeding it as actionable intelligence into their own fraud prevention systems on a real-time basis. It had a few benefits in doing that, because the banks could rapidly share the information, obviously. You could quickly tune your responses, whether it was automated or not, and this stuff was pretty geeky IT stuff. This version of JavaScript in this browser using this CV3 cookie, it's all pretty high-tech type of information. And quite an unusual thing also happened out of it. It really allowed us to start to track criminal groups and predict where these criminal groups might be going with their types of techniques and technologies. And that informed us to be able to understand where to place our resources and investment funds, for future years. It also enabled the police to, gain real-time intelligence and obviously follow up on criminal activity quite quickly. So it was really a win-win scenario. Minister Bishop from Australia mentioned yesterday the creation of a new cybersecurity centre, and as part of that, we're working with that agency to look at how we can also start to better share real-time intelligence between government and private business into this. And we're likely, private enterprise will be given government security clearances and the like for particular individuals. And I'm very interested to hear about Interpol, because I might come knocking on the door about how we can then start to share all the information we have at this group in Australia with major organisations like Interpol. But it wasn't enough sharing that intel. We had to do more. So we created a forum called the Interbank Forum, where all the financial organisations in Australia now meet every quarter. It's a 2-day session where we have an e-fraud and an e-security. It's getting a bit hard to sort of split those two, isn't it? I mean, they're almost overlapping completely now. But what it really was to do was to give government a view of what's going on in industry. We've been terrible as the private sector about telling, particularly the policing agencies, what's actually happening and what fraud losses is actually occurring. So this is a forum to hear it in a closed session, warts and all, and share between government and private industry. It also gave the government departments a chance to talk to private industry about some of the topical issues that they see. And some of those include stuff like mule recruitment, and that changes all the time. Mules are, ever got one of those emails that say, hey, you want to make $1,000 a week? You want to work from home? They're the type of ones that are trying to trick you to collect money on behalf of the criminals and then pass it on to the criminal gangs. The other one's phone porting. We're big in phone porting. It's a phone SMS in Australia. So we use it as two-factor authentication. So you go to transfer some money out of your account, we send an SMS to your phone, you put that code in the SMS into your computer, and it's all good. Criminals are onto that, they're working phone porting and calling up and porting your phone. And also, many of you, particularly in the UK and Europe, will start to see the SIM card type exploits. So keeping on top of that. And one of the ones that's emerging at the moment we're talking about is things like Bitcoin. It's a peer-to-peer financial system that you can now change into real dollars. And there's even Bitcoin ATMs you might have seen start to see pop up around the world. It's a nightmare coming, I think. And not only is it Australia that's doing some of this stuff, a group called FSISAC, the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Centre, based out of the US, is really having success in getting all of the US banks, and more broadly now internationally, starting to share intelligence information. It's been quite a success. One of the side effects of having the denial of service campaigns against the American banks has been everyone now wants to share more, right? Because everyone wants that real intelligence and don't want to be the first ones to be hit. And what do you do if you do get hit? So there's been a lot of sharing, and the FSISAC has really built a database of indicators of compromise, which is fantastic. So now financial services organisations from around the world can start to plug into this and not only share that information, input into that information, but also recover that. And again, they're working on being able to feed that in real time into your fraud detection type solutions. So some really good movement, I think, in somewhere there. The second one I wanted to talk to you about was really the Internet Services Providers Code of Conduct. In Australia, we're a bit different. We didn't, take the big stick as government and say, you will, and legislate. We actually got the service providers to agree to a voluntary code of conduct, which is pretty amazing in itself. But it's called the I-Code. And it's a self-regulated code, and it was really brokered by the Internet Industry Association in support with the Government Department of Communications to actually get that to a working model. It has a lot of things within that code, but one of the main things, particularly for me, is really the identification of compromised systems. What better place is your internet service provider to detect those compromised systems? It also has the ability to contact owners, and the code agrees to contact owners. Now, it's not perfect, and it can't pick up everything, and it also has the ability to suspend those owners, which is quite amazing, really, to be able to take customers off the network where they're compromised. It really helps control things like spam and malware, and obviously participating in botnet-type activity. It's been pretty successful. I think those sort of codes are going to become even more important as we get into things like IP version 6, where everything's going to be connected to the internet. Your refrigerator is going to have a PC in it that you do your shopping on that is connected to the internet. I saw the latest Samsung ultra high definition TV at the exhibition centre. It too connected to the internet. One of the things that we have in these internet systems today is patching as a main source of vulnerability remediation. When all of these systems are connected to the internet, who is going to be responsible for remediating the Samsung or the fridge? These devices are going to be a problem for the internet in general. In 2006, National Australia Bank had a denial of service attack. It was quite early days then and reasonably unsophisticated, but we followed a lot of the perpetrators back to the source to see where these were coming from, the attacks were coming from. And one of them sticks in my mind particularly. It was an air conditioning control unit from the University of Utah. So that's the sort of thing that we'll be up against in the future. And really the ISP type code of conduct is really where countries should consider going, and even on a broader scale. And even that, though, the I-Code really wasn't enough. There was really another piece that was needed beyond that to actually look at new and emerging type threats. So there was a new forum created called the Communications Alliance. And this Communication Alliance now looks at all sorts of new threats that carriers can start to deal with. One of the ones that really comes to mind is the mobile arena that we're in today. If you read any of the semantics and the McAfee's and any of those virus vendor type threat reports, they'll all tell you that the Android malware is going through the roof. I can vouch for that. National Australia Bank has, an internet banking application for our Androids and iPhones and the like as well, like most large banks. And it too has been targeted with malware, which tries and tricks the customer into installing this piece of malware as an application on their mobile device. It obviously uses a combination of technology and social engineering techniques to sort of make you do that. But today we have solutions that can still keep up with detecting that malware exists. But as these attacks become more sophisticated and criminals work out how to do this stuff in a better way, the ability to provide this out-of-band authentication that I talked about before, where you have an SMS code on one hand and a computer on the other, and they're two separate devices, we're now seeing all that merge into one, and it's one device where the whole device is now vulnerable. Even with things like tokens, you say, well, I solved that through a little token. Well, criminals socially engineer around the token, and the malware asks you for your little code that changes every minute on your little token. And of course, now that token is valid for about a minute and a half. They've got your user credentials and the token number. They can commit the fraud on your behalf. So I think, you know, forums such as the Communications Alliance are going to become paramount in keeping up to keep ahead of the game, because banks like us can't do it on our own, government can't do it on their own, and nor can the carriers and the internet service providers do it on their own. So in wrapping up, I'm really going to agree with a colleague of mine that was sitting in about this chair yesterday in the cybersecurity panel discussion, and that was Sherry Maguire from Symantec. You know, the only way forward is collaboration. Everyone is actually saying it here. It's the policy makers, you know, which mostly come out of government, that obviously are getting much better informed. You know, 3 or 4 years ago, the quality of conversation wouldn't be at this level. There's the internet intelligence sharing. Everyone wants better intelligence sharing, right? I mean, everyone doesn't want to be the first one to be hit. If something happens on one side of the world, you want to know about it as immediately as you can so that you can tune your systems to prevent against that on your side. And that's going to be governments and industry alike sharing that intelligence. It has to be. And then there's the industry ourselves. You know, we know that we will have fraud. We know we can't keep up totally, but we risk manage that against what, as customers, you demand of us as a banking financial system. And we work with our vendors to create new solutions to try and address those risks and get them into a position that we can tolerate. And lastly, it's the user education, and I really always like to ask this question. User education has a lot to do with it, although I'm not sure how I convince my grandmother on what she needs to do to patch her Java application to make sure she's not exploited. But you know, even yourselves in this group that are probably quite computer literate, you know, we've all got some sort of mobile device, and I talked about Android's device and how McAfee and Symantec saying it's going through the roof. If you get a piece of malware on your Android, do you all know how to get rid of it? And I'll just leave that as an open question, right? But look, I've got to end off by saying it's not all bad, right? I mean, you know, internet brings many benefits, and we have to keep realising that, right? It's very easy to give a negative story as I present the e-fraud and e-security dramas, right? And which you're seeing at this session. But, you know, who wants to go back to the days when you've got to line up at a branch to make a withdrawal over the counter? I don't think most people in this room would want to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Much appreciated. We're going to be close on time, and I want to make sure we allow for some questions and interactions between panel members. So let's try to stick to the time allocated per speakers. I'll now turn to Bilal, who's talked to us on the best practices in the context of a national cybercrime strategy. Bilal, please.
Thank you very much, Jay. Good morning. I will not talk about how professional this event was organized by the Korean friends, and I will not talk about how we are warmly welcomed by the host. What I will talk about is strategy and the capacity of Turkish National Police Department of Cybercrime. And I will provide you one real international case cooperation, how several law enforcement bodies come together and take down one criminal organization, and also what we learned at the end. So evolution is fact. Everything is evolving from one to another. Internet, it was in the beginning human to computer, then it turned to human. Now there is sensors, now there is machines. They also produce a lot. They're also involved. Crimes also evolved a lot. The classic crimes become online. Then we face with the new crimes which were not existing before the computer. And we are now talking about virtual worlds, avatars, avatar rights, avatar crimes, etc. And the attackers also change. Before the computer, the technology-related crime starts with a whistle for fracking to make use call of free phone calls. And now we are talking about cyber armies. Maybe we will talk very soon the machine crimes, which the code itself will dramatically commit a crime with intentionally or with somehow. And we do evolve as well as a law enforcement body in Turkey. The first computer crime-related unit established in 1997 at IT Department of Turkish National Police. I can easily say it was good initiative that time, but it was not the right place to put it. Why? Because IT is support unit and was not investigative unit. I did fight for that, and thankfully in 2003 it was replaced in proper place, which was Organized Crime Department has its own high-tech crimes unit. So in 2008 and 9, counterterrorism, public order, different departments start to setting up their cyber crime units in their own departments. So not to consume the resources, it is decided in 2011, we faced with the Department of Cybercrime, which is independent body. So these are our expert profile. We have trainers, which is so much limited nowadays, and many people has dual job in this field. Digital forensics experts, cybercrime investigators, which is it may sound similar, but it's totally different experts, I can easily say. Operational support staff, IT experts, and fully support, which deals mainly with funding, running our vehicles, etc. So what we do is basically we divide in the 4 different categories. We do try for prevention, awareness. Cyber patrol, we have cyber patrol teams. What their duty is, without having a case or complaint, they are going to internet, to social media, if there is any crime-related issues. And there are some crimes, especially with the kids being victimized, and it is not easy for them to report, especially if we are talking about sexually abused. So we believe we should be there if there is something happening, and if we need to take action, this is the main role of them. On the other hand, if any governmental organization is being hacked already and the governmental organization not recognized yet, this is one of the duty what they do. And we do update the regulators, telecommunication authority, banking regulators. We provide them trends. And actually there is one fantastic document which I will advise a lot, the Council of Europe document. Actually, they prepared a group of people, and law enforcement and ISP cooperation, this is also advised there. Law enforcement is supposed to provide trends to industry and the regulators as well. So this is what we are trying. Awareness, it's very important for sure. We do try to reach to our citizens and the industry. And we, in a year, we are able to reach physically in a room somehow 120,000 people approximately, and virtually much more, but for sure it is not enough yet. Regarding the investigations, as you may see, computer network crimes, cyber crimes against financial assets, cyber crimes against person or public and international investigations is one another. In the digital forensics, we have different levels of digital forensics, and together with the headquarters, we have 18 labs in the countrywide. In the support, we have academy, so we consider training is support. Human resource management is the key unit we have, and research development and operational support and IT, and planning and resource allocation is another support unit we have. Due to time pressure, I will not go so much detail. If anyone interested more, please comment. I would be greatly appreciated to share. So we are responsible for offenses against the computer data system. Computer-related offenses is also our responsibility. Content-related can be, depends on the content, and digital forensics what we do. There are some visuals from our office, and this is the entrance. So when it comes to computer forensics, human resource profiles, we divide in 3 different categories. So it is a kind of career. If the candidate supposed to start for computer forensic assistance and have to be stick in this position at minimum 6 months. It may it may extend much more. And they do first response, triage, some mobile extraction, which together with user-friendly tools and label and packaging. Second one, assistant specialist, minimum is 18 months. The aim of him to be computer forensic expert and supposed to be subject matter expert in one specific field, which could be a Mac forensics, decryption, network forensics, wireless, vice versa. And computer forensics expert is actually at the top of the expert pyramid, and certification we provide is 3 years, and after that should receive course, examine, etc. They can sign by their own, but the others cannot. So we create mobile forensic lab, especially if it is not organized crime. We have to the suspect supposed to face with the judge in 24 hours. Sometimes the judge wants to decide in well manner and want to see something from his computer if the suspect may relate it with it. So we created some computer forensics lab, especially for the urgent cases or with the corporate search and seizures we do use. And cooperation is definitely key in this field, and we do cooperate with several bodies, with the regulators. And international cooperation is for sure so much important. Why? Because subject, victim, or data, at least one of them is somewhere else in the world. It's so rare we are seeing 3 of them in the same country. So subject matter expertise we found as expertise. And we do cooperate with several bodies, and sometimes we contribute. To be honest, we do benefit much more than we contribute. And almost all of them, with the mutual law enforcement cooperation, with the global ISP cooperation, we are definitely trying to be much more stronger. And when it comes to case, the case is called Dark Market. Dark Market was one carding forum. There was something like 5,000 people, criminals were in. I'm talking about between 2005 to 2008. And actually, the investigation started by FBI. One FBI agent, as undercover, penetrated to Dark Market. And with his effort, several LK from Germany, SOCA from UK, and we as Turkish Nation Police work together, take down all the group. So in Turkey, the real suspect, actually the head of the pyramid, was Chow. This is his nickname. So what Chow was doing, he was admin of the Dark Market. He has actually ruling somehow 2005 real and certified criminal. So no, it is encrypted, and there was a watching system to get in. So this is how they certify. And he was producing skimmers. On the other hand, he was doing escrow service. 2 criminals want to do a business, but they don't trust each other. They were coming to Cho, and by commission, Cho was actually making the business available. On the other hand, he was consultant. In the underground world, generally, you buy something, then the seller disappears. But he was behind his products, and he was consulting any crime you want to do. Just pay, and you receive the consultant. And he was also several ads. You may still find on the YouTube, Crime Enforces Laboratories. So this was his underground company. And on the other hand, he was fugitive of jail, but we were not knowing. When I saw the undercover agent of FBI show me this one, the skimmers, so it looks mass production, so very professional, not handmade. So we definitely paid a lot of attention to Chow, who he was. On the other hand, there were several cases running in Turkey. One of the person who was fugitive of one credit card frauders investigation. He was fugitive. One day he go to media. While police was, he was wanted by police. He did talk to media, and what he said, he provide a lot of news from the underground, some techniques that the criminals use, and he told about one name, Chao, the king of the underground. So we were very, very curious who the Chao was. And while we were looking the fugitive of Cryptos case, and also Chao did come to talk with the media through electronic encrypted way, not by physically. He was very angry to journalists while he's talking with the script kiddies, and he make a kind of advertising because he's doing custom spatial developing service turnkey solutions, and challenged the police. We are very grateful for that. This only motivated for us. So everyone was talking about the identification was problem. So how we found, again with the cooperation, we did a lot of things with the technical. He was definitely a genius. Not technically was possible. Many people around the world tried, it didn't work. When we seized his computers, we faced seven different layers, anonymizers in his computers. So then we understand why we couldn't get him. So how we did, basically, you know, I listed here what he was doing. He is also skimmer producer. Skimmer is a device which you may install to ATMs, then make some cash. And we go to, if there is something hardware, supposed to be sell physically, so we did talk with all shipping companies and provide half-day training. And 1 month later, one of them informed us, one of his crew is trying to send a skimmer to somewhere. So we link with that and find the people behind them. So these are the seized material you may see. And this is the, there was very international, in 8 languages, he was providing pin pads, several embossers, skimmers, etc., etc. Due to time pressure, I will just leave the best practice for your reading, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Bilal. Very informative. Let's move on now to ways to strengthen international cooperation with Mr. Lee, please.
Good morning, distinguished guests. I am honored to participate in this conference and to share my opinion with the renowned experts from around the world. As shown on the screen, I will briefly introduce Korea's general situation on cyberspace and cybercrime, recent efforts and remaining challenges, and then shortly provide a perspective on international cooperation. Let me start with the general situation briefly. In Korea, cyberspace has become an essential part of our lives, spanning all areas of society. On the screen, for the big picture, you are seeing the ICT Development Index published by ITU. Korea is at the top. Total number of internet banking users very high, and daily internet banking usages and distribution rate of smartphones, number 1 also. Due to its well-developed information and communication networks, Korea has become a primary target of diverse and high-tech cybercrime. New and modified forms of cyber financial frauds, such as smishing, pharming, and memory hacking, are increasing and becoming major social issues. The slide on the screen shows the amount and scope of damage caused by recent cybercrime and their detailed examples. On March 20th in this year, 48,000 network devices were destroyed in a large-scale cyber attack. Many efforts have been made by the Korean government. As shown on the screen, first, various related laws have been enacted or amended. Second, investigation agencies such as Korean prosecution and police formed and reinforced special investigative units to effectively investigate cybercrime. Preliminary prevention systems such as cyber crisis alert, phishing keeper information website, fraud notification programs have been introduced. Fourth, cooperative systems among government agencies such as Cyber Threat Evaluation Council under the Presidential Office have been established, and the cooperation with the private sector has been much strengthened. Among these efforts, for the purpose of preventing phishing frauds, various measures such as vigorous monitoring of possible phishing sites, tightened two-channel personal authentication for financial transactions, prohibiting alteration of phone caller IDs, and delayed cash withdrawal of money transfer have been taken. Moving on to the next subject, Korea is fully committed to enhancing international cooperation. To date, Korea has concluded the treaties on mutual legal assistance in criminal matters with 73 countries around the world, while concluding the extradition treaties with 77 countries. In addition, Korea is cooperating with G8 24/7 high-tech crime network, Interpol, and other organizations. We are actively participating in the investigations of cybercrime requiring international cooperation, such as phishing frauds, stealing of business secrets, distribution of child pornography. One example is the investigation conducted in 2012. The Korean police closely cooperated with the United States FBI in its investigation to identify an international financial fraud organization which defrauded the mortgage loan of $11 million US. We were able to identify and indict 17 of its members. With such efforts in the area of mutual legal assistance in criminal matters, Korea is trying to come up with ways to coexist with developing countries and create a win-win relationship with them. By using our high-tech ICT infrastructure and experiences of dealing with various cybercrime, we are consulting developing countries on ICT policies. At the same time, we are supporting them with the human resources and the equipment and sharing our investigation methods on cybercrime. However, there's still some way to go. Domestically, we need to reinforce or improve our related laws to effectively respond to cybercrime, specifically in relation to investigation tools, the preservation order for digital evidences, search and seizure of remote locations, obligating internet service providers and digital information operators to cooperate with the submission of evidences are necessary. Many states around the world seem to have already adopted these measures. However, the legal basis for such measures are weak and still under discussion in Korea. Also, we have some difficulties in securing sufficient resources for effectively combating cybercrime done by experienced hackers. And even though there are diverse channels for cooperation among relevant agencies in Korea, it is not always satisfactory to systematically manage different types of collected criminal resources, investigative leads, and evidence analysis reports. This is causing ineffective sharing of such information. The fundamental reason for such problems, I think, may be that cybercrime is not regarded as a top strategic priority matter in our society. As we witness an increase in the harmful effects and seriousness of the cybercrime, more prioritized national-level support in the areas of laws, regulations, budget, and personnel is needed to effectively combat cybercrime. At the international level, Korea has not yet joined any cybercrime-specific transnational legal instruments other than G8 24/7 program. However, we are positively considering joining an international convention such as the European Council Convention, which seems to provide a good basis of international cooperation in relation to cross-border cybercrime. The transnational elements of cybercrime necessarily call for very close and efficient international cooperation. However, differences in infrastructure and practices among regions and states are not small. Currently, international standards for cybercrime exist on a regional basis, not on a global basis. So, I believe that now is the time for us to engage in more substantial discussions on a global international instrument related to cybercrime, hopefully with the UN taking the charge. I think that the recent excellent work done by UN ODC, namely the comprehensive study on cybercrime, would be the starting point for such discussion. And Korea will be able to play an appropriate role based on the diverse experiences and progress it has achieved over the years. In addition to providing technical and professional assistance, I want to emphasize that the international community should continue to make efforts to help states form a social consensus necessary for securing domestic strategic priority in the fight against cybercrime. In this context, this conference is very meaningful and needs to be continued. For the conclusion, based on our experience, I'm sorry. Oh, anyway, it's conclusion. I would like to summarize the three most important factors to effectively deal with cybercrime as follows. First, we should take a multidisciplinary and proactive approach in tackling cybercrime. Second, it is very important to secure strategic priority to combat cybercrime in order to acquire necessary infrastructure and resources. And lastly, in addition to providing technical and professional assistance, the international community should continue to help countries to domestically secure high level of strategic priority in cybercrime combating. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation and the specificity of your conclusion. I'll now turn to our two discussants, and I'm sensitive to the time left. So we will start first with Alexander, followed by Carrie-Anne. Please, Alexander.
Thank you, Francois. Dear participants, I would like to thank all the speakers today and make a few comments. The threat of cybercrime is growing day to day and already affects many spheres of human life, civil society, business, and government. The scale of illegal activities in cyberspace is expanding, and their forms are becoming more and more sophisticated. The situation is further complicated by the lack of really universal, and was the most important, effective and operational international legal framework. The mentioned European Council Convention on Cybercrime is the first and currently the only international instrument, and its creators have made a great contribution to combating the misuse of ICTs. However, the document doesn't appear to be a panacea. The Budapest Convention, which was elaborated at the turn of centuries, when the level of ICT's development wasn't comparable to the present day, is now beginning to lose relevance. In particular, it doesn't regulate the issues related to spam, phishing, botnets, but we must keep in mind that even tomorrow, criminals may handle brand new and even more dangerous programs and methods to steal our money, personal data, disrupting internet services. But what does really make the Budapest Convention not so attractive to many countries in the world? What is its main problem? At various international fora, the issue of the controversial nature of the item B of Article 32 of the Convention has been repeatedly raised. It provides the possibility of cross-border transmission of data to the state party to the Convention directly from the certain entities of other countries. It is still not clear whether the above-mentioned persons are natural or legal. They could be citizens of other countries as well as providers or owners of internet resources. There is no specifics as how the data would be transmitted, once or on an ongoing basis. Would the data be provided to the above-mentioned person or another state law enforcement agencies would have direct access to the information resource. However, the most important, this kind of data transfer will take place without notifying the competent authorities of the state where is the source of information located. So this actually implies the unlimited freedom of interference into the information space of other countries and poses a threat to the national interests and violates the principle of state sovereignty. And the point I can't miss, the article of the Convention creates a fertile soil for the violation of fundamental human rights and freedoms, and in particular the right to privacy. Unfortunately, we all witnessed the recent revelations of activities conducted by services of some countries. In fact, a global system for the interception and processing of personal data was facilitated. On the one hand, these activities contradict provisions of the Council of Europe Convention on the Protection of Personal Data. On the other hand, the Budapest Convention effectively legalized such actions. After all, within the meaning of the Budapest Convention, the only requirement for access to the data of citizens of other states is a permit by a service provider or any company involved in the data processing. This kind of state-private cooperation has allowed intelligence agencies to view and analyze the logs, emails, track file transfers all over the world without users' awareness or consent. And according to the Budapest Convention, such actions are actually legal. The human rights and freedom of access issues are extremely important for Russia. We believe it is necessary to ensure a fair balance between human rights and respect for the principles of national sovereignty and non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries. The denial of any restrictions on the internet, promoting unlimited internet freedom, will create an atmosphere of impunity and permissiveness, which in turn will only lead to an increase in human rights violations in the network. At this point, it's worth mentioning Henry Kissinger's words: "There is no justice without self-restraint." So, thank you. I'll be brief.
Thank you, Alexander. Sorry. Thank you, Alexander. We'll now move on to Carrie Ann, please.
Thank you, sir. I was heartened by the presentation of Sanjay and Alex regarding the capacity building efforts of the Interpol and the OEC, but I think from a developing country perspective, I'd like to paint a picture and then ask a question. The picture I'd like to paint is Trinidad and Tobago, for example, has a population of 1.3 million persons. 87 out of 100 persons use fixed mobile internet services. We have been fortunate enough that our Honorable Prime Minister and the government at large has supported the development and the approval of a cybersecurity strategy. We've had the support so far of the development of a cybercrime bill, as well as the approval for the establishment of a cybersecurity agency. With that said, we can't ignore the fact that developing country has other issues, such as funding, financing, detection rate in regular crimes such as murder, serious attacks, other financial crimes has been very low. How can we as an international community, in the face and adversity that governments do face as developing countries, we have Jamaica, for example, has had a high success rate in some of their cybercrime investigations. We have some of our Latin American countries, but repeatedly, even though we've gotten technical assistance, trainings coming in 2 weeks, how can we, firstly, convince our governments in the face of financial constraints that cybercrime is important, recognizing that to fight cybercrime, you need technical capacity, you need persons who are highly skilled, that would cost a lot of money to train, and will cost a lot of money to sustain them in their jobs. And how do we, given that you only as weak as your weakest link, recognize that developing countries would be a harbor for cybercriminals?
Who wants to tackle this very good question? I will pick a volunteer otherwise. Alexander, please.
Well, the first intervention was not really a question, so I don't have to go too much into that. Maybe just two remarks. If all the countries in the world had legislation at least up to the level of the Budapest Convention, it would be in a much, much better shape. And question also back to Russia, why have you not implemented all the provisions that are already there, rather than saying this is outdated? And the second question is, the Budapest Convention refers to criminal justice investigations only and not to the activities of intelligence services, just to make that very clear. On the capacity building side, because that was a question, it is important to underline that cybercrime and electronic evidence are transversal issues, referring to all sorts of crime. So it's not just a question of now catering for a limited capability of some investigative units, some prosecutors, some judges to deal with cybercrime only. You need to be able to transform, to train all judges, all prosecutors, all law enforcement in your country to a minimum. You have to make it a transversal issue. You have to build it into the development cooperation agenda so that you get broad support from international organizations, from bilateral donors. From the Council of Europe side, I mentioned to you several times, we are ready to support Trinidad and Tobago. We had a very good workshop some years ago there. We're happy to provide more training, to share the resources we already have with you. We just need to figure out what is your position on the Budapest Convention. Thank you.
Mr. Yan, please.
Well, because the moderator asked to make it more practical. This is like what to make us something practical. Because, you know, most of the, especially the most valuable resources you have is actually human resources. So most of the kind of the capacity building should be started from the development of the people. But in many occasions, they start from training actually the frontline officers, quite lowest level of officers. And in my experience, many of officers, almost all of officers who get the kind of training complain about their managers because they never understand about what the cybercrime is actually. And even many of the law enforcement agencies, actually they have a kind of rotation system. Once they are assigned to work as a manager for cyber unit, after 2 or 3 years, they are transferred. Then they can keep attention to cyber matter. So it may be applied to the frontline officers as well, because the manager have no interest in kind of the long-term strategy. They just want to respond in immediate need from the media and from politicians. Then it ruins everything. So what I want to suggest in this place is that we may make a kind of an international effort to educate and training manager level officers. So now the United Nations Office of Drug and crimes, making a kind of the capacity building program for African countries. And Interpol has a kind of the IT crime, the training program, and some countries have their own individual official development assistance program. So what I wanted to suggest is that we harmonize all the kind of programs to make a kind of standard or guideline to make the kind of the scattered effort to be more effective and efficient to make a better education for manager level officers. That would be a good start to solve that problem, is my idea.
Please, Sanjay.
Yeah, just 2 quick points, and that's actually an issue that we've heard in talking with other member countries as well. And I mean, the first point is I think there needs to be better communication, coordination with the different organizations providing the capacity training to basically make sure that we focus, as I mentioned in my speech earlier, our strengths and not be redundant. I mean, there's a lot of training modules that are being constructed out there, that are being developed to see what's out there and to make sure that we're not, doing a training and then at the end of our training, another organization comes in and does the same thing. So I think there has to be a better coordination at that level. The second thing is that capacity building cannot be a one-size-fits-all approach. It's got to be something where we come and talk to the country, figure out what the needs are, and develop a comprehensive module that'll be sustainable. And that's something where it's not a quick shot, but it has to be something where we work hand in hand. And that's quite frankly what we're trying to build with the IGCI, is to kind of maybe rewrite the way we do our training, to actually work with the member countries, and once the training is completed, make sure the points of contact back at the digital crime center is there, where we can continue working when cyber issues do come up.
Thank you very much. I see no other hands going up, and I think we are running out of time. I'm looking for some guidance, but guidance is coming from my watch, so we're past our time. I would wrap up the session, I would suggest, and I'm sure our panelists will be available for interactions during the coffee break, which by now will be shortened a bit. Just maybe 3 brief observations from my standpoint, and I won't be too long. A little bit, we noticed yesterday a lot of folks talking in the cybersecurity session on basic hygiene, and I won't give you examples of that, but it seems to me that in the context of cybercrime, that thinking is also applicable. Good national strategies can make a dent and be positive in dealing with this issue. The corollary to this is that without those approaches, one is left open. Second point, we need to learn from one another. I think that point was made repeatedly. It speaks to information sharing, it speaks to cooperation, it speaks to capacity building, so that thought is there, alive and well. Last point, we're all limited in some way on our resources. This is just the reality. And it seems to me as well, as I listen to the presenters and what they said, I feel that one has to be able to take action, based on risk. So risk management approaches to the extent possible to tackle the more damaging crimes that are out there. So that would be my conclusions. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much to the panelists. This was an outstanding panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister François Guimond, all speakers and discussants. This brings us to the end of panel discussion 4. Before we begin panel discussion 5 at this hall, on the agenda, international security, we will have a coffee break for 10 minutes until 10:50. Coffee is ready to be served in the lobby. After the coffee break, please return to your seats by 10:45. Thank you.